thank you very much for having me here, and I'm really excited about today's event because it's a very crucial, important step that we take together, and more will join. My contribution today is, of course, in my role of the advisory board, but also with my background in actually working as a practitioner within an industrial area, an industrial site, where industrial symbiosis was, you could put it, invented, and now it's spreading, and we actually won a Swedish prize equivalent to the Nobel Prize. It's called the Win-Win Sustainability Prize, which Al Gore and Kofi Annan also won, because what we have done luckily has spread out around the world, not only the Nordics, and people are actually now trying to not copy paste, but to actually find their own way to realize the value proposition that industrial symbiosis in a circular economy actually represents. And that's what I'm going to present to you today, some illustrations of how that actually works. You heard about me. It's just important to let you know that I am not me only. I'm one of four in our local secretariat. So they're representing the Kalundborg Symbiosis, which is really a private non-profit organization. So you could actually /NGO, because we work with the purpose of actually, of course, helping our local members, which you will meet in a minute, and then we work together, of course, with the companies and the local organizations, public, private, to realize symbiosis. We're going to try and play a short movie now and see if the sound works. If it doesn't work, I'm just going to speak over it. Does sound like this. Okay, so what you just saw is Denmark, and what we're focusing on is this little area just opposite of Copenhagen, 110 kilometers away in Kalundborg at the coast. We have more than 50 years of experience, and I will explain why it took so long. But our aim is really to try and copy or help promote this happening in all over the world. And we want, of course, our own little sweet spot to become the world leading example with a circular approach to production. And as you will hear also, it's really about partnerships. It's really about working together. And through that, we can actually identify residuals that can be resources that can then be ways to produce in a circular way. And we do that in our little area. And this is already too old because we have new members. But this is a very small, 17,000 inhabitants. But we are really making a difference. So we work with energy, water, and materials to reuse that, save that, recycle, upcycle. And we categorize that into 3 categories, and I will tell you more about that. And currently we have 33 streams being shared between these local 17 companies in this small town. So what this takes is really the trust and the innovation. And it's not that difficult. We heard about LCA, but I will prove that you can also start in different place. Of course, LCA and all those big data sets are important to accelerate it. But we would really like to take it further than just Kalundborg. So nothing is more refreshing than to experiment and innovate and share with others. And that's what we do. And that's what we want to do more about, also with you guys in the UAE. And because it's really making profit economically, environmentally, and socioeconomically. And that's what we want to try to convince you is the new normal. It's really the old way of living, but it's the new normal we need to introduce and realize to the way we produce and consume, as you just heard Aileen talk about. So this is in very short word about the Kalundborg Symbiosis mindset around the industrial symbiosis approach. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, click one more time, please. So this is more like the, didn't really work. Could you go back? Let's try and see if it will work again. If you click one time. It doesn't. We just move on. Okay. Anyway, you saw the map. I just wanted to introduce you to the members. So these 17 now, including the harbor. What we do with these partners is actually we make sure as a facilitating secretariat is that we remind them of all the good things that they have already created through this mindset, shared mindset, and the partnership, where we look at the waste not as something that should be wasted, but something that should be investigated as a potential resource. And if we find it as a potential, then we try to match them up against ideally local partners to actually do proof of concept and try to integrate this as a replacing resource for virgin materials into their production to create the sustainability, the redundancy locally, and the value that is created through that. But in order to get to that point, I mean, one very strong thing is in working in a partnership like this, and the local one is if you can come up with a shared vision and a shared mission, because then you have everybody aligned. So I think that's a very important point to make, that in order for all this to happen, you need to actually to take the step towards a partner on actually maybe a partner you don't know, that could be a very essential business partner, helping you solve some of your issues also. So you need to actually step into the room and share also the difficult stuff. And through that collaboration, you can actually come up with a shared vision and mission like ours. We want to be the world leading industrial symbiosis with a circular approach to production. And that way we can slowly but surely identify where we have common challenges and opportunities and the value propositions that I was referring to early on. So what can we create that creates value for our own organization and our local society, and will actually also brand our products and our production and our organizations for customers to go and seek our way of producing our products, because we are becoming more and more circular. So in this partnership, we try to renew our partnership, invite more in. We want to connect more. So we want to go into full resource utilization by actually doing screening in individual industries. So I will show you what that is about. And of course, we want to promote what we have already achieved, how we went so far, or got so far, and how to proceed. And today's presentation and the entire symposium and my work with Surplus is, of course, a very important way of promoting this, not only in our own backyard, but to make it a global issue and a way to solve global challenges. Next slide, please. So you saw this slide. It's very simple. So a very simple, you could call it ecosystem. This could be two organisms in your garden where one is picking up the waste resources from one organisms and using that as their own resource to grow, produce, and so on. And you could imagine if you have many more organisms or industries in a local area, they can interact in a much more kind of efficient and detailed network of interactions where resources are not going to waste or only very little. And we create much more value, and we are much more resilient and robust in our local area because we have all the resources there basically, or at least we reuse many of these. So next slide, please. So this is how it looks today. Streams going between these 16 companies and a new one joining us. And this is just to show you that we try to categorize it so it's readable. This is much more complex, but this is showing 3 categories: the water, energy, and materials. Public-private partners. And what you can see here and should notice is that the utilities and like the caliber utilities providing water, drinking water, surface water, district heating, cleaning wastewater, is one of the essentials in kind of an industrial hub like ours and in many others. The power plant Ørsted on your left, you can see there's a lot of streams going in and out, also very important. And the local landowners association at the Novo plant, also dealing with resources in and out, are quite essential. And then apart from that, you have many other special examples that I will not have time to go into, but just to explain to you that these are actually bilateral agreements. All these lines going from one to the other are bilateral agreements that we are not interfering into, but we're trying to facilitate that they meet, discuss, and sign contracts as they normally would do with another supplier, but far away, right? So this is really green business models where the stream is not running only one way in terms of the value proposition, the material may do, or the energy, or the steam or water, but it's really in both directions where they share the trust, they communicate, they share data, they innovate, they co-create, they invest. And that way you can do much more from less when you actually go together and do this. And sometimes it's 2 companies only, or sometimes it's 7. So it really depends on what resource we're looking at and how many can actually see that as a part of it. And what we do in our secretariat, so being the local facilitator, which is really a must, you must have that at some point. And that can be a bit objective, not being owned by any of the companies, but be there to make sure that they meet. And in our board of directors, they meet 6 to 7 times a year. So they meet and discuss these things and how can we improve. As you can also see, they're not only sharing value for themselves, but you can see some lines are actually going outside of away from this ecosystem. So they're actually sending reused waste products into the local environment, to the urban area, to agriculture. So that's really where we start to create a circular economy beyond our own local geography. And that's where we talk about the urban agri-industrial symbiosis, where we really try to create a number of values. And this is something you can revisit on our homepage with much more information on the companies and on the individual streams. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go much into this, but just to let you know that this is when we call talk about Kalundborg Symbiosis, this is a rather a long story. It's an old lady born in 1961, or actually we did actually redefine that into 1972, where we have the first private-private partnership where 2 companies make a contract, and the local refinery shares their surplus gas as an energy source into the production of plasterboards, and we count it from there. So it's 15 years of development, but hey guys, I mean, sharing this and putting this into a system and doing that systematic and working with surplus, we can accelerate this quite a bit. And we also had Eileen on board with her knowledge and her networks. So I mean, there's much to take from and good ways to accelerate this and to avoid some of the drawbacks and the mistakes that we did. So this is just to tell you that that's how we have worked for many years to actually achieve this, and now the last 10 years, 15 years, we have become very much systemic. So this is definitely possible to not copy paste, but to help initiate and mature in other areas. Important to let you understand that this was not planned from the beginning. It was really only in 1989 when students, our local gymnasium students, went out and did a project and tried to map what was happening, that they understood that companies were sharing resources like in nature, where 2 organisms can coexist and they all both gain from it. And then they came up with the name. So the baby got a name, and then suddenly we had a lot of tension. So I mean, it was green business models, circular economy that was starting to evolve since 1961, and not only in Kalundborg, but the name was given here, and then a plan was made later on. So it was just making sense. It was smart business. It was creating value financially and also for environment and saving resources locally. So that's why it made sense. And then we understood what we were doing, and now we're trying to actually help others to do similar initiatives, of course adapted to your local environment, your local businesses, and your local culture. But just to let you know that now we are organized as this private non-profit association, even though we went through a number of ways to try and organize ourselves. But that way we are independent, objective facilitators, serving all the companies that are members of our association. And that way, I mean, we can be respected and included in whatever they want us to include in. And that is really creating a dynamic, productive environment in terms of making things happen. So as practitioners. Next slide, please. So this is how we are organized. The governance structure, I think maybe that could be of inspiration, especially going next steps if you want to organize yourself in that way in the UAE. So we have this association, and where we have the board of directors. So that is really the directors on site with the decision power. So they meet these 6-7 times a year, facilitated by us. We make an agenda that they agree upon. We take up the fun issues and the difficult matters, and try to push things and do interesting activities, projects, and develop infrastructure together. And that's where we use the secretariat where I'm um, employed, working together with the advisory board, which also represent skilled staff from the companies to support the board of directors. And then we meet every year at the annual General Assembly to prioritize um, tasks that needs to be in focus for the coming years. And then, of course, underneath of all that, we assign special tasks to working groups within these categories, and so energy, water, and material. But also we have an innovation board that helps us kind of match up with national or international companies with technologies or ways to produce that are more circular than we know. And then, of course, very, very important, communication. Because having 16 partners to work together, we need to also be aligned in the way we communicate or do not communicate. So that is a very important thing to keep in mind. Next slide, please. Yeah. So does this pay off? Well, we had the term life cycle assessment. That's a very, very big task. I would rather call what we did an LCI, so a life cycle inventory, where we would look at the map I showed you before with all the connections, and then we said, if we caught all these strings and we had not done industrial symbiosis where we share waste as a resource and then we produce something from it and save resources, what would it then have meant in terms of these KPIs that I'm showing you now, in contrast to what we're doing now? So doing that back in 2019, and much has happened since, but this is the latest numbers we have. We yearly save between these 16 companies, and back then it was 14, 600,000 tons of CO2 each year. And it's only on what we call industrial symbiosis. It has nothing to do with what they do of internal optimization, which is really part of how we should develop our circular economy also. We should also optimize internally in our production. This is only between companies. So this is what we save yearly, 4 million cubic of groundwater. And groundwater is the only source right now in Denmark to produce drinking water. So quite crucial here to understand that. And then 62,000 tons of materials each year is recycled. Next slide, please. Investments, of course, also, because working in a partnership like this, realizing green business model, growing both economically, but also reducing carbon footprint and improving infrastructure. I mean, that attracts the willingness to invest in your area. And this number you can multiply by 5 or 6, because now we just realize huge investments in creating CO2 infrastructure based on biogenic CO2 that will pave the floor and make power to X possible within the next few years. So that is really part of the value proposition, that when you work like this, it becomes very interesting in many aspects, and definitely that will attract investments and that will create jobs, and then that can help you develop your own local community, and that will also attract people to move there. So there's a lot of synergies and cascading synergies in actually working like this. It creates jobs like I showed to you here. And very important for our, rural area is that we have actually been able to attract 10 new education degrees within the last 7 years. We had none, and this is so important to actually keep our young people growing up in Kalundborg, to actually stay and get an education that are fit for purpose, and that fit for the needs that the local companies have. So we can actually keep the young people together in our local community and help grow this in a sustainable way. Next slide, please. Not too much about this, but just to let you know that this is a reference to what you probably know as the technology readiness level. We have, together with Klaus Sommer from the EU, developed this approach, which is a symbiosis readiness level. So basically what this is 9 steps where you say, when you have a good idea and you have 2 more people that will join you and agree on this is a good idea, then you have reached level 1. Then when you go out and look for local resources and you actually have mapped those together with those that find it a good idea, then you have reached level 2, and then you can move up that way and realize specific screenings in the industries proof of concept for your business model, where you look at kind of a resource or technology that helps you reach towards circular ways of producing. We have to remember to add sustainability assessment to that, system qualification, partners committed into signing contracts and going into commercial production, and then the resilient partnership is where you can actually go back to one and revisit this solution in 10 years or come up with new ones. And this is really also a circular process. So this is just a dialogue process where you include your partners in ways of exploring what you're doing now and what you should maybe do in the future, and how we could grow business together in a sustainable way. Next slide, please. So briefly on this, so I mentioned our innovation board and advisory board. So what we use this for is really to accelerate how we can actually match our own national or international companies that come with a product or technology that seek business opportunities, but at the same time can also solve some of the issues that we have in our local region. So we try and do the fast track, where everybody can contact anybody in our area, but it all comes to our small task force where we do a quick due diligence, filling out a small template so we understand what that company offers and how sustainable they are, set up a meeting, and then we do a quick match with companies to actually realize business very quickly, because it may be very urgent and the missing link. Or we do a slow track via the advisory board, where we go into much more, analytical approach and do test and demonstration, lab testing. We try to attract funding from, for instance, the EU, to do large project with a number of external partners with their knowledge to actually create new synergies, but in a longer term. Next slide, please. And then into what I promised, the screening. So basically on your left, you can see a very simple way of doing this. This can be done within an hour. I set up a meeting with a company, could be an existing or new company, or somebody that are considering to join our ecosystem in Kalundborg, the Symbiosis. We go in and tell them we have a value proposition that, including the mindset of our partners in the ecosystem, Industrial Symbiosis, where waste could become value. We want you to understand that this is something you could be part of, but before we can actually come up with some ideas for you to actually build an even better and stronger and more circular production, we need to understand what your business is about. So they present what they are doing and what their challenges are and opportunities. And from that, we go through what goes in of resources on the left as resources and what they produce. And then we look at all the residuals, so all the waste streams. Is anything being reused internally? Can we do more? And if there's something left, then that could ideally then result in the byproducts that is then symbiosis. So we always look at internal optimization first, highest value, closest near to your production. But then we say, is there byproducts, waste streams you cannot use yourself? So instead of wasting it, send it off as a byproduct, make the contact to our symbiosis on the right, lower part. And also please look at the resources that you use in your production. Maybe you could replace part of that or all of that by byproducts coming from the same local partners or new ones. And that way we can actually add the green lower lines to your company business model, and not only improve your economy and your resource efficiency, but actually brand your products and the way you produce towards your customers or your end users, and attract investors, also staff that would like to work in this way, especially young people would like to work in companies like this. So this is a very quick way of doing a screening to actually onboard and mobilize companies to understand that this is for them. We do it. They can actually earn money on this, but they can also do a lot of good, and they can help do the green transition, and they can maybe even come up with new ways of producing and new types of products by interacting and talking to the neighbor. Next slide, please. So we also do this in other places than our own backyard, as I also kind of tried to point out. But this is the proof. I and two other people in love with symbiosis kind of came up with the idea, and it's been a dream for a long time from my side to actually try and set up as a national network like Elin talked about the CradleNet. We have actually set up a formal network free of charge for now, but simply meet so and so often, where we actually share experiences around Denmark. Denmark is very small, but you can see how many we already have onboarded that are public-private organizations that all, to some extent, wants to learn or know something or just want to take the next steps. And that's what we do in terms of having online meetings and one yearly physical annual meeting where we do a workshop also this year on water, because we find common interest and we can learn from each other. And we also learn from that. So that's one thing. Next slide. And then we also have created this in a Nordic context. It's funded by the Nordic Innovation Fund. Nordic Circular Hubs, we call it, and it's kind of a 10-year-old network that has now developed into something bigger. And we're actually using Elin's arena platform to try and build a Nordic network. So please go and visit that and see if there's something there that you could actually benefit from. I'm sure you can. But this is just to say that we work with Finland, Sweden, Norway, Iceland, and other stakeholders in Denmark, and not only that. Next slide, please. We also work in an international context where we have been funded by the Danish Energy Agency, where we work with the US primarily, but also Mexico, Canada, and Brazil, where we have actually developed a masterclass to train the trainers, to help the facilitators to learn how to work with industrial symbiosis, how to initiate, onboard stakeholders, how to develop it, how to communicate around it, and then how to perform screenings in practice. And we had them visit for 4 days 2 weeks ago in Denmark with great success. And we're going back to Portland, Oregon, end of October, start November to go through and do real life screenings. So yeah, I'm just gonna try and end this, I guess, by saying that we have a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of technologies out there. We know how to do it in practice when we have the technologies, but it's only when people meet that things are happening. So our approach is as practitioners. So you need to go out there. You need to use this surplus initiative platform, whatever comes up that we develop together, to meet each other and to share current challenges, opportunities also, but also future ones where we can actually do much more together than if we would have to do it single one of us alone. We will never get there in time. So it's really about people, the trust, the relations. So that I really encourage you to maybe already today to talk to somebody you haven't talked to in your network, to start understanding what they are facing, and maybe you have some of the same challenges that you could go in and maybe solve together. And with the people like Anna and her team, and I'm also available. So but we need to meet and discuss this and to find common solutions, right? So thank you very much. Very honored to be here today, and I really look forward to help develop these initiatives also in your area. Thank you.